This episode is brought to you by Podcast Assist, offering voiceovers, audio editing and mastering, transcriptions and show notes, episode summaries, and even hosting a podcast on a topic important to you. Visit facebook.com/podcast assist for more info on their flat $30 per hour rate. Subscribe with iTunes, Audio Boom, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting app. And if you enjoy what you hear, like us on Facebook. Also, consider throwing a little cash our way by visiting patreon.com/KoreaFM. And find more of our great content on our home on the web, KoreaFM.net. On April 22nd, the March for Science will take place around the world as the first step of a global movement to defend the vital role science plays in health, safety, economies, and governments. That being the case, it's no coincidence that April 22nd is also Earth Day, and still no coincidence that along with the march in Washington, D.C., more than 500 cities around the planet will also be holding marches on that same day. Busan, South Korea is just one of those cities, and I'm joined now by an organizer of that event named Jennifer Blackman to discuss why she and other foreigners and South Koreans will be marching on Earth Day, April 22nd, at Busan's Peace Park starting at 10 a.m. So, Jennifer, I'm sure you're getting busier and busier as the March for Science Busan gets closer and closer. So thank you first off for joining me. Let's begin by discussing what the March for Science global campaign is and why you personally chose to be involved with this event that'll be happening here in Busan.
Hi, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. The March for Science is really centered around a march that's happening in Washington, D.C. in the United States. And it came about basically right after the Women's March. And a group of scientists decided that they really wanted to champion robustly funded and publicly communicated science as something that's a pillar of human freedom. And once people got word that this was happening, there were organizers all over the world who wanted to take part. Myself, as a U.S. citizen living in Korea, I really felt that that was something that I wanted to show support for. So I and myself and some friends decided to do a march here in the southern part of Korea.
And so you mentioned yourself and some friends. Has this been expat heavy, the organization of this event? I believe I saw on Busan Haps, which is a local magazine, that they seem to make it sound like this was a very expat heavy event. Sometimes that is the case with organized events on certain topics in South Korea. And then other times expats just kind of participate alongside Koreans, and maybe there would have been more of a sharing of those duties, or perhaps it would have been more or less kind of a South Korean event, and we just kind of tag along.
Yeah, that's a good question. At first, when I saw the march happening in D.C., I put some feelers out to see if anyone was organizing anything in Seoul, first of all, because I could travel there. And after a few weeks, I hadn't heard anything, and certainly nothing down in Busan. So I decided to take it upon myself, along with some of my neighbors, to really organize something. And yes, the prime organization has been from expats. We're trying to get as many Koreans involved as possible, and it's really open to anyone and everyone that is interested in science, wants to support science. You don't have to be a scientist.
That's right. Yeah, you do not have to wear a lab coat, although that would be nice, wearing lab coats during something like this.
It would.
So a little bit more about the organization of this event, as I'm sure no surprise to you and anyone else that's going to be participating. There have been a lot of protests the last several months in South Korea, not just about the impeachment of Park Geun-hye. There are protests every so often in South Korea. They actually have a very vibrant, long-lasting, historic culture of the protest here on the Korean Peninsula. But the point I'm trying to raise is that I'm sure government entities are very sensitive at this time, perhaps more so than just a couple years ago, or certainly perhaps before the sinking of the Seoul, which we just had our 3-year anniversary of that this last weekend. So what has it been like organizing this event in Busan? It's not called Protest for Science, but a lot of people might think of this perhaps as a protest, and in some ways rightfully so. So what have you had to do to organize this event in the city of Busan? I'm sure you've probably been in touch with local authorities.
Yes, and that's a great question. And we're very sensitive to, the current climate here in South Korea. And I think you make an important distinction that it is the March for Science, and we are very much couching it as a celebration of science. We want to show our support for science and science education and transparency in science, and we want to show our support for those marching in the United States. As far as organization, you're very correct in saying, we've been working with authorities. I've gone to the Busan Police Department and spoken with them and applied for permits, which have been granted, and spoke with them about safety. They were very much willing to help and going to have an officer out there to help guide us and want this to be a successful event for everyone.
Kind of along those same lines, on your website, which is marchforsciencebusan.wordpress.com, there's a very noticeable list of promises, or perhaps pledges might be the appropriate term, associated with this event. For instance, you start off, you say, "We are nonpartisan and we will not use the March for Science to criticize politicians or political parties." And each one of these statements is also followed by the same statement, but in the Korean language. "We will use no violence, physical or verbal, toward any person. We will not destroy or damage property." There's some writing about having respect and honest, transparent accountability. There will be no weapons, alcohol, or drugs at this event, and we will hold each other accountable. Was this something that was constructed perhaps because of the climate we just talked about of, the last several years of protests and large events happening in Busan? How did this idea generate itself? I think it's a great idea, but when I first saw it on your website, I thought, I wonder why they had to put that up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that this is a peaceful gathering in support of science. I wanted to make sure it was clear in both English and Korean that, we're not there to disrupt. We're there to show support. And that was something that I wanted to also pledge to the authorities at the time that we applied for the permits.
And so let's talk about the show of support that's going to take place on Earth Day, March 22nd, here in Busan, at the Peace Park, starting at 10 a.m. So what's the plan? What can people look forward to when they attend this event?
So right now we're planning to meet between 10 and 10:15. We're trying to gauge the numbers. We're hoping for a large turnout, but probably somewhere between 50 and 100 people right now, hopefully more with the word getting out there through some articles and through your radio program. And we're going to gather. We'll probably take a photo that we'll share with the main organizers that they'll share on their site. And then we are going to march around the entire perimeter of the park. I'm expecting pretty much every person there to have a sign. We've discussed, getting those signs translated. So one side is in Korean and one side is in English.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Because we realize, a lot of the traffic and the foot traffic at the park there may not read English. And we really would like to share the message with everyone.
And so one other thing that I saw was that this March for Science Busan is an official satellite for the March for Science taking place in Washington, D.C. So what exactly does that mean? I'm sure you've had to contact them as well to get that status.
Yes, that's right. So when I was organizing, I contacted the DC site. They have a mechanism for you to submit your information. And I've been in contact with them constantly. We have a communication method that all of the city organizers can ask questions. They send us information to try to maintain consistency across messaging. Although they do realize that in each of these different cities, especially outside of the United States, we have different constraints as far as what we can and cannot do. But I've really felt a great amount of support from them, and that they really want to be inclusive of all of these cities that want to show support for the main march. There is a satellite coordinator back in DC that's working with everyone. And there have been telephone calls, conference calls, that sort of thing.
You haven't spoken with Bill Nye the Science Guy, have you?
No, unfortunately, I haven't. That would have been great.
Yeah, we got to get him here on the peninsula. Boy, do I love me some Bill Nye the Science Guy.
He's great.
Just a few more points before I let you go, Jennifer. Like I said, I'm sure you have plenty of things to be doing as the time is counting down until this March for Science in Busan on April 22nd. This is also Earth Day, so it's an important day for many people, many different causes. Since you are a satellite, officially recognized satellite, if you will, of the March for Science in Washington, D.C., does that mean people should register on that website? How do people register for this? Because I know it's important for people to be counted, correct?
Yes, that would be great. If people could go to marchforscience.com, there is a place there where they can register. Also on our website, marchforsciencebusan.wordpress.com, there's a link that will bring you to that site to register. It's very important for the March organizers to try to count and know how many people across the globe are marching in support of science.
And of course, also, as an expat here in South Korea, social media is very important. So I know that March for Science Busan is available on Facebook as well. So people can check you out there.
Right. You can check us out on Facebook and on Twitter at MFS Busan.
Excellent. Well, I've been speaking with Jennifer Blackman. She's an organizer for the March for Science here in Busan. Jennifer, best of luck. I may see you out there for the march as well. I just now have to go get myself a lab coat and kind of pretend that I'm Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Excellent. Don't forget your goggles.
That's right. No, he always had. They have to have people marching behind me shouting, Bill, Bill, Bill. This will be good. Okay, well, Jennifer, best of luck. I appreciate you taking a moment of your time to speak with me. And I hope everything goes as well as possibly could be hoped for this event. And also very important, anywhere that the weather will cooperate. So best of luck with the march.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And at the end here, I do want to note that there's also going to be a March for Science in Seoul, the capital of South Korea. It's going to be the same day, April 22nd, so Earth Day, and they're going to meet at the Sejong Center in front of Gwanghwamun at 2 p.m., and then at 3 p.m., they'll be marching through downtown Seoul to spread their message and support for the cause. So once again, that's April 22nd, Earth Day in Seoul. They're going to meet at the Sejong Center in Gwanghwamun at 2 p.m. and then 3 p.m. they'll start the march. And once again, that's for the march in Seoul. And I was just speaking to Jennifer about the march here in Busan. Good luck to anyone participating in the march this weekend in South Korea or any other country around the world. And stay safe, everybody. This episode is brought to you by Podcast Assist, offering voiceovers, audio editing and mastering, transcriptions and show notes, episode summaries, and even hosting a podcast on a topic important to you. Visit facebook.com/Podcast Assist for more info on their flat $30 per hour rate. Talk radio, music, and podcasts from the Korean Peninsula. KoreaFM.net.